So in a previous video, I made a statement about how TF2's crate economy works. I wanted to get this current video out a little closer to that one, but you know, stuff happens. There were some disagreements with what I said. This is perhaps the issue with trying to summarize things briefly to keep video length down. You get crates, which you can unlock with a key that costs $2.50. You get a randomized item out of said crate which carries real monetary value. It's worse in TF2 because the items can provide a gameplay benefit. They give you unique abilities. You'll open crates in vain hope, praying to Gaben that you'll get the item. They tied weapons that alter gameplay to this system. You can pay for things that affect gameplay. Now, people took issue with this description of TF2's crate system. I'll summarize the objections as the following. The stock weapons are all competent on the battlefield. TF2 weapons can be unlocked every hour or so simply by playing the game. It's based upon playtime. You don't have to just sit in an idle lobby. Items can be obtained through achievements. You can find all of the weapons very easily on trading sites such as scrap.tf. The weapons are worth barely anything. You can buy them for a fairly low price, quite easily less than $1 if you know what you're doing. The weapons unlocked through crates are unusuals. They track your stats. You don't get regular weapons from crates. If you don't get the items through trading, you can buy them through the Manco store, although it's not really worth it. Microtransactions help Valve fund the free content for their games. Paid map packs from before were an issue and split up the player base. Steam wallet money isn't worth real money. So to start with, I do get frustrated when I get things wrong. Reveille is not played for fallen soldiers. Doom did not use affine texture mapping. These hexagonal drums from the 80s were connected to a synth. They did not play a sample, and they totally do not sound bad, okay? I don't think I was entirely wrong, but rather outdated. I was working on, admittedly, quite old knowledge of the game, from around 2012 to 2013. I do admit that what I said can certainly give the wrong impression. Idling was, of course, a huge thing. It's still a thing, and people tended to get a lot of weapons just from leaving the game on in an idle server while they're away. It seems like the power used to run the computers used to sit in a lobby is more expensive than the actual items that were being obtained from idling. Maybe there was something more to my NFT comparison. You can of course obtain weapons from achievements, contracts, and just playtime in the game. I was aware of that beforehand. It's a pretty slow process and it takes quite a while to unlock things if you just stick to that route. I think if somebody were to obtain all weapons, it's very unlikely they'd go through the free route. So at some point, you do have to pay. Of course, the recommendation I typically heard was to pay through the item market, through trading, sites like scrap.tf. The weapon unlock system is really only relevant to new players any way you cut it. Experienced players already have all the weapons, and new ones aren't just being added to the game all the time. Another thing about experienced players is that they're also already converted customers, dedicated players. They have buy-in. So from the outset, how the regulars navigate the system isn't really relevant. If somebody is a whale, they're already sold on the game. It's the new players who need to be converted into buying customers in any business model. And it's those players who the system seems to be designed for. Trading requires some degree of knowledge. You need to understand a few things before you can even trade. A new player just logging in might see some cool weapons they want to use themselves, but it at least takes some acclimatization for them to actually obtain it. For one, they need to know about the system, how weapons are obtained, where to get the weapons, where to trade, how to not get scammed. The TF2 weapon system is actually a pretty ingenious way of getting people invested and therefore willing to spend more. It's basically a way to get people hooked on trading, and expanding the TF2 economy obviously benefits Valve's bottom line. Most items do still enter the market through crates. Weapon trading and the weapon system pushes buy-in for the whole TF2 economy, because it means you've got them to log into scrap.tf, to join trading servers, and it means you'll have shown them a bunch of items and cosmetics along the way. It gets them to care about this silly hat system by tantalizing them with rare hats and showing them just how prestigious they are. Although it's not directly obvious, this system certainly pushes people to spend money in-game. And remember, this is the weapon system doing this. a system that affects gameplay. Not to mention that the typical way people buy all the weapons is buying a key or something off the Manco store. If you're new to the game, that's the easiest way. Buy a key and then trade that key to buy all the weapons off scrap.tf. Again, pushing players to buy from Valve. You basically have to pay Valve money at some point. The game is pushing you towards it. Look at the limitations on free accounts, which are becoming even more limited by the day. You do basically have to buy from the Manco store to be a proper TF2 player, to get all the weapons, to play on many servers or even use text chat. Of course, it's reasonable that a free-to-play game will want to push its players to buy from the store, but to be under the impression that Valve isn't using their weapons system, as in the system used to obtain guns, to push people into microtransactions, is, I think, just a bit naive. Although it is very cheap to buy weapons, you're still paying for them, which is technically still pay to win. Even though the price is low, Valve still benefits from it financially because it's created a connected and more interested customer. And I will stand behind the pay to win statement. While the unlocked weapons have drawbacks which make them not overpowered, they still affect gameplay. In some situations, they can help you win. There are some players who will do better with these weapons. There are some scenarios that call for a certain item, and this item can help you win, thus pay to win. It's not that you're paying to win all the time, but it will help you win in at least some scenarios. If there were absolutely no reason to use any weapons besides the default, then Valve would have created a superfluous system, which is perhaps worse because it means they introduced all these items just to introduce people to their economy and thus their store. It means they put resources into something that doesn't actually benefit the game at all and just makes them money. And again, I want to reiterate the point that few people acknowledged. They could have put those resources into an unlock system, maybe XP progression, maybe tied to exclusive challenges, rather than achievements which are inferior to just outright buying the weapons. There are so many opportunities. They could have made a compelling system in place of the player economy and loot boxes. It's the lost opportunity here. Something to keep people playing. Just remember, every time there is a loot box system in a game, it robs us of something that could have been more interesting. That's not to mention that items like the Third Degree, Solemn Vow, or the Man-Tread/Gunboats that provide no downsides when opposed to the default loadout. Or the weapons you can unlock that replace a weak weapon that very few people really use anyway. Many new players may well get impatient, for which they have the Manco store. You can buy all of the weapons for any given class from the Manco store. Obviously, a lot easier and less time intensive than idling and cheaper than obtaining them from a crate, which are the methods I mentioned. But it's still way more expensive than what they're actually worth. They're charging up to 50 Aussie bucks for the Soldier Pack. Even the $8 sale price is still ludicrously expensive compared to what they're worth. It's a scam, and people agree. I saw a few people just straight up say the Manco store is a scam. How exactly is that a good defense of Valve in this scenario? To say that they're scamming on the main page of the store in their own game? That's clearly the price Valve thinks they're worth, considering it's the price they're willing to sell it for. You might say, well, the people who want to buy that are idiots, so they deserve to lose their money if they fall for it. TF2 is seeming a lot more like an NFT game day by day. I mean, that rationale can be used to justify virtually any scam. But the NFT comparison is stupid. Scams are prevalent in the NFT market, and scams aren't prevalent in Valve games? How many times have you gotten a random friend request from some private account sending you a trade offer link for SteamContinuity.com? They're rampant in Valve games and on Steam, and they can turn their scamming into real money. I had some people defending it by saying that the items aren't worth real, actual money, and Steam wallet money isn't real money. You can't be this naive. There is almost always some way to cash out. Trade on third-party sites, exchanging for gift cards, send people money on PayPal. Sure, it's dodgy, it's not as easy as just directly cashing out from your account, but somebody who scams people on Steam has already well and truly passed the threshold of what constitutes dodgy. And the game items themselves aren't just valueless. They do hold legitimate value. Perhaps some of you will remember the court case where a kid threatened another kid with a knife to get his RuneScape items. It was ruled by the judge to be theft. They decided that the in-game item held real value. Any way you cut it, Valve have kids paying to get a chance at obtaining an item of genuine value. I would say that falls well within the definition of gambling. Now, some of the points I brought up were things that Valve has fixed, and I acknowledged it. The Skyrim paid mods were cancelled in response to the backlash. Beyond what I mentioned, there were also the weapon sets that you needed a hat to complete. These were, again, entirely tied to the crate system and game economy, while providing a benefit to the player. Now, obviously it's absolutely a good thing that some of these decisions were reversed, but it's still important for a number of reasons. For one, it shows what they're willing to do. They've done things like this before, so it indicates that they aren't against things like this on principle. Things like pay to win and paid mods. It shows that we are justified in being vigilant in our attitude towards this company. Another reason is precedent. When we defend Valve on points like this, it sends the message to companies that they can do whatever they want. If it's unpopular, or more likely hurts their profits, they can simply reverse the decision and come out unscathed. It allows a kind of environment where companies can push whatever anti-consumer ideas they want on their users, and just seeing what sticks, what people don't complain about or kick up enough of a stink about. If you want to see an example of bad precedents, look at No Man's Sky. It's infamous as a buggy, broken, half-finished game with no content upon release. It was turned around through many updates over the years to becoming a fully fledged, functional and feature-rich space exploration game. It even had that internet historian video that changed everyone's opinion on it, that changed its story into one of redemption, proving to the whole industry that you can release broken, unfinished garbage, so long as you come along and fix it later. Maybe Destiny or Final Fantasy XIV did it first, I don't know, but look where it's gotten us now. See how many new games are releasing quarter-finished, broken, and unoptimized. That's how we got Halo Infinite or Battlefield 2042. It's the standard now. Gamers will accept the minimum viable product, with the promise that it will get good eventually. Now, I think Valve has set a lot of bad precedents in a similar vein. Valve started the whole paid mods thing. It was on the Steam Workshop before the Creation Club was a thing. I'm not sure how you can argue that Valve isn't complicit. Moreover, the paid mod system was based on the work they had already done. For CSGO and TF2, they were already making money off of workshop items for years, and the actual item creators were getting a paltry quarter of the profits, less in some cases, like with that Dota 2 tournament controversy. They set another precedent with the loot boxes. Many European nations are pushing to ban them for their predatory nature. They're becoming less and less popular with time. Big publishers are phasing them out, in part due to the massive controversy they produced. How do we forgive Valve so easily for basically inventing them? Valve is the innovator for the feature in PC gaming, and easily the most influential in bringing loot boxes to AAA gaming. That's why I take issue with them. They pushed a lot of these things that are harmful to gaming. In many ways, introduced them. I also want to briefly address some points related to the previous video, but not TF2's market. The NFT comparison, for example, I still think it's pretty close. I heard, no, the problem with NFTs is actually that they harm the environment, as if NFTs can only have one problem associated with them. And it just seems to me like people repeating the popular consensus. But yes, I do think introducing scarcity where it does not necessarily need to exist isn't a good thing. I don't believe in creating an artificial market in a game where most of the items enter said market through what is essentially gambling. Of course, I don't mind an economy system that's purely for fun and isn't tied to real money at all. Some people also mention that the gambling sites aren't being run by Valve. Valve does not support them. This is entirely true. My point in the video wasn't to say that Valve is responsible for these gambling sites. The point was to explain how Valve's systems lend themselves so naturally to such scams. Because gambling on a third-party site isn't a far cry from gambling in-game. Valve created an environment ripe for scams in gambling, and it wasn't remotely necessary for them to create this environment in their games. Scams are way more rare in games that don't have this whole market and loot box system surrounding its unlocks. Of course, there were still scams to give kids recon in Halo 3, for example, but they were far less prevalent. Scammers flock to Valve games, and dodgy practices like gambling sites just naturally follow very closely behind. There was also the issue of the 30% cut of profits that Valve gets. Of course, this was good for the time Steam came around. They were undercutting all the publishers at the time, but it's not good for the modern day. There are other services that offer a better cut. I know it doesn't really affect us as consumers, but all I'm saying is that it'd be better if there was more pressure on Valve to give a better cut to developers. It would be better for them. Did I need to critique Half-Life and CSGO in that video? Probably not, but I wanted to get my thoughts on it out there, and I'm not sure when I'll have another chance to do so. Interesting that some people told me that I was wrong about it, as if I could be incorrect about how I feel about something. So that's my follow-up. Remember when I say we should criticize Valve, it doesn't mean I want them bankrupt. I'm not asking you to boycott their products. It just means we need to be vocal about their issues, and we need to be vigilant for whenever they slip up again. Continue complaining about them like we complained about in the past. Don't get complacent like gamers seem to have been in the last few years. I'm not trying to guilt you for playing TF2 because TF2 is fun. Just be ready to call out Valve whenever they do something bad because we know they're capable of doing so. Don't be under some illusion that they're perfect. Otherwise, please subscribe. Thanks for watching and goodbye.
And I'd like to thank my patrons Delirious Fool, Topkek Red and Adam Safranco.